right, so welcome to our Learn Experts / Training Sherpa webinar. And for 2024, we're actually going to focus on, we're going to bring in a number of thought leaders in the industry, learning space, and focus in on hot topics. So this won't be the only fantastic session. There'll be more coming each month. But today I am joined with Kristine Kukich. And of course, the customer education is evolving. Kristine will talk about what she terms augmented intelligence instead of AI, which is really, I think, softening the change process for a lot of us in the learning space. But of course, AI, augmented intelligence, key to shaping learning's future. So we're both certainly excited about that and hope to see a lot of innovation in the future. So already we're starting to see personalized, gamified, interactive, immersive, predictive learning experiences. We've had that in place for several years with different technologies. So those are some of the trends that are continuing. And of course, customer education leaders, and perhaps some of you today are instructional designers or people that develop content, deliver instructors. Of course, I know that you're looking at how do we incorporate some of these new trends and technologies into our learning programs. So just a bit of background about me. I'm Sarah Sedgman, CEO of LearnExperts, but I have a long career in tech, 23.5 years, coming up on 24 years. Started my career as an instructional designer, technical writer, and then led some of the largest learning businesses in the industry. So I've done all sorts of different modalities, testing, training for customers, internal employees, and partners, and am part of some really exciting associations in the industry. Sedgman is one, Computer Education Management Association, which of course Kristine and I are on the board there, and TSIA, and we're involved in a number of different forums as well. So really keep close to what's trending and happening in the industry. 2019, I founded LearnExperts to both help companies build their learning programs, and we've built a product called LEA, LearnExperts AI, which is rapidly helping companies build their content for courses. So we created the company to solve a problem we lived, and are excited, of course, about that. So that's my background, and I'm going to be asking Kristine a lot of exciting questions today. We'll see how many we get through. We're going to pause around the 45-minute mark for question and answer. So if you have questions, please submit those, and New is going to help us read those out and answer those questions. If there aren't questions, which I'd be shocked, but if there aren't, we have lots more to discuss, so we'll fill the full hour with great stuff. So over to you, Kristine, to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Good day, everyone, from wherever you are dialing in from. I am Kristine Kukich, the principal owner of the Training Sherpa, and my focus now is actually on AI in customer education and customer marketing as scale engines to customer success, which is our mixology podcast that we do on YouTube. Talks about all of that kind of stuff. And the focus that I have really has been for the last 3 years on the work that we're doing with AI and how we can leverage the tools in customer education. So that's, I got started, oh gosh, just by doing research on how to leverage the changes to product when I was at Oracle, and what they were doing with AI to make things easier for the products that I was working with there. And it has since moved into become kind of like a passion project for me to understand the tools and the techniques and create some structure around how we can analyze the tools and techniques in customer education through some of the things that Sarah was talking about. We focus on kind of like 5 categories of information with personalized learning and gamification and working with assessments, quizzes, certifications, that kind of thing, content development that we use to build out all of the information and data analytics. So I take that lens and I apply that to all of the different tools that I analyze and that I review, and to see where we can go. And then on Mondays, I publish out Success from the Field in LinkedIn that talks about some of the success stories that people have in how they've been using AI to do their whatever it is that they're working on, whether it's assessments or any of the content development questions, all kinds of things. So that's what we see, and that's where I am right now with the use of augmented intelligence, as Sarah was saying, rather than artificial intelligence. They both come out to AI, but I prefer the word augmented, mostly because it is a tool, right? It's not going to necessarily replace everything that we do or replace us, but it will certainly help us get through some of the tools, the repetitive tasks that we do, and some of the things that really take a lot of time. So we can see some really efficacy in the way that we do business. And so that's why I use augmented intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. But of course, we all shorten it to AI, and it's the same there, whichever definition you prefer as you go through it. So that's how we get started, right? Is just understanding that that's where we're focused today, is AI.
Awesome. And now that you've been introduced to Kristine, you have to check out LinkedIn and her mixology. We have maybe shared an espresso martini or two in the past as well, but Kristine and I go way back. We were just discussing, I think 2008.
Right?
So
yeah, easily 2008.
Yes, both, lots of experience in the learning industry, but Kristine's a true thought leader in this space. So that's why we're here today. So maybe we could start with, so the augmented intelligence is interesting because, a lot of people maybe misconception around the artificial intelligence, that it's magic beyond magic, can do everything. So we still need a human. So the augmented is interesting. And can you tell us about what you're seeing in AI? How is it being used in the learning space today, maybe over the last couple of years, but also as we look forward with ChatGPT and all of those interesting things? What are some of the techniques or things that you're seeing learning group organizations do?
Prior to March of last year, when ChatGPT exploded in the marketplace, what we really saw, or should have been seeing in the business that we have, is personalization and gamification, right? Learning paths, personalized learning paths, structure for gamification to kind of, ump people up and give them direction. So if they scored well in the gamification score, they got to do extra things and cool fun toys and all of that. Duolingo, probably one of the best examples of that. But then we saw what ChatGPT could do. And this was less than a year ago, right? In March is when it came out last year. And that explosion of generative AI is now the foundation of what people think when they hear augmented intelligence or AI, right? They're really thinking about generative AI and what tools like ChatGPT can do. So we're seeing that everywhere now. We're seeing additions of generative AI tools into content creation, right? Everybody that builds content or that allows you to, that has some kind of authoring tool, including Leah, right, is working with you to get some kind of generative AI that will help you build out that content, whether it is, I saw a really good example a couple of weeks ago where they took the tech library on a particular topic, probably about 30 pages of documentation on a particular slice of the product, and turned that into an entire learning plan.
Cool.
All we did is we said that there are some basic assumptions. We want this to be micro learning. We want this content to be no longer than 7 minutes. That's their definition of micro learning. And they put some more parameters around the request. Generative AI went out, looked at all of the content, and returned a amazingly solid outline in about maybe a minute and a half. And
That's
had I been doing that manually, that's a completely different story, right? I would have had to go through and read all of the content and then try to figure out how to put it into the learning style that I prefer when I write, when I create. I'm a big process-driven, jobs to be done kind of person. So I'm always looking at things of how does this tool fit into the process that my people will be using. And so that part of it takes me a long time to get that structure. Once I become much more literate in the product, I still have to read the documentation, right? As we release new functionalities, we have to do more and make edits. And so I was completely surprised. The other example that we talk about is moving to video, right? And there's a lot of tools out there now that will do speech to text, text to speech, and add in talking heads if you want talking heads associated with it, whether it's my head or an avatar, right? It doesn't really matter. I haven't done my own yet because I'm not that,
yeah, that's really
yeah,
funny.
you're right. But the structure for things like Videate, Synthesia, the guys at Cluso, some new guys in the marketplace, those kinds of tools out there really help us to do that level of content. And my Synthesia example, I'm an Excel SME. I've taught Excel for a very long time, almost from the day it was created. And the example that I used for the Synthesia example was a VLOOKUP. I want to do a training on VLOOKUP. In real life, for me to go out and find a data set that I needed to use to work with this example, build out the content, record the content, edit the content, and prep it to be produced out to whatever my end product is going to be, it'd probably take me at least half a day, like 3.5 hours, 47 minutes.
Wow. Huge
So
productivity.
the productivity gain that I got just by initializing it in using generative AI. I let it build the outline. I let it go in and create a script. It set up, I had to go in and edit the script for sure. It wasn't perfect. It doesn't like the word VLOOKUP, for example. It didn't know how to say it. It tried to phonetically pronounce VLOOKUP. So I had to go in and edit the script so that it said VEE lookup. But that's not a problem, right? For me, I still saved 2.5 hours in my workload. So we'll see that part of it. But also remember that AI is not just generative, right? It's not just about content. It's about data analysis. ChatGPT 4 and a slew of existing tools out there help you do data analysis. I can upload large sets of data, CSV files, Excel spreadsheets, content from downloads from other sources, right? Databases full of info, and let the AI tools spit it out into a nice, pretty chart, a dynamic chart, right? Something that will change as the data lives in a data lake, for example. As the data gets populated into the data lake, then we can turn all of that into live updates on scorecards, right? Health cards.
Yeah.
Or again, take your pick, right? We've got all different kinds of options. And how do we, I'm working on a concept now that is going to be kind of like my 2024 project is, what does an ideal customer education health card look like? And how do we integrate that health card into the health score of customer success?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? All through AI, right? All using AI tools. So that's, we have so many options, and that can be daunting, right?
Yeah.
Because we could use it for all of these different things.
So there's the content creation side and the productivity gains around, curating content, things like that. And the data. So, how to present that data quickly to show the ROI around learning, probably both from delivering the learning and the learner consuming it.
Mm-hmm.
What about AI-powered chatbots, virtual assistants? Like, those seem to be in the past that companies were using in the support organization, but are you seeing that come in?
I am, yeah, we're starting to see a lot more use. I just met with in October or early November of last year, I met with a couple of organizations that are thinking about leveraging a chat bot to feed into, to be the voice of learning in the environment. So in product, where we've had all those other, pendos and things like that out there, we can then leverage a chatbot to be the voice/face, right? Because we can use avatars there as well,
Yeah.
of learning, and then have that language model feed off of the types of questions that people are asking when they are in product. It still doesn't manage quite as well the concept of it's more than just step-by-steps, right? Learning is really more than just step-by-steps, but it does help with the idea of putting a structure around the usage, and I think that we'll start to see that more and more. I just read some very interesting articles coming out of MIT in the last couple of weeks as I was catching up on some of my end of year reading from 2023 that talked about the ability to create a tutor, a personalized tutor.
Hmm.
And I was having this conversation yesterday with another colleague. We were just, talking about AI in general, and the idea that we could leverage a chatbot as the starting point for the personalized tutorial on all things related to what I'm working on. So it might not necessarily just be the software product that I'm working on, but it could also be the basic jobs to be done content. So from a customer education perspective, I could be focusing on product, but also on the idea of some of the thought leadership that comes from Sedgman, for example, right?
Yeah.
Where all of that could be feeding into my personalized tutorial. That's also taking into account that I have 5 alarms on my phone every day that tell me basically to get up out of my chair and move. Right?
Who would
Because
want to get in that big red chair?
right, right. So it says get out of your chair, Kristine. One of them does it is an audible. It is get out of your chair, get up, go make lunch. And so but all of those concepts coming at you from one virtual assistant, right? And,
Yeah.
and where I think that that's one of the areas this year that we're going to start to see some of the integrations, right? We saw an explosion of generative AI tools throughout 2023. Many of them leveraging the language model from ChatGPT, right, from OpenAI.
Yeah.
But there's now competitors out there, right? The Claude language model is there. The guys that are at Bard using their language model from Google. We've got the guys at Intellum are creating their own language models to work
Yeah.
with in their tools. The guys at Thought Industries are using the language models from OpenAI in their product. So we're seeing that explosion of usage, but still coming back to probably 3 or 4 baseline language models. Everybody's just using them a little bit differently. I think what we'll start to see as we move into this year is that kind of coalescence of tools into packages that allow us to integrate effectively with other parts of the tools that we use as an organization.
Hmm.
So as people in the customer education field in particular, I would be watching to see how I can aggregate not just my product, but how do I talk to some of those other parts of the business model that a
Yeah.
customer might have.
It, on that, if somebody's on this webinar and thinking, how will I know what other people are doing in the industry? Where are some places they could go to find out what other people are doing or see use cases?
Watch my space, to be perfectly honest. I am trying really hard to aggregate a lot of this content from a customer education perspective mostly through LinkedIn, because that's a common area for everyone. But we will be posting some of these discussions out to Sedma. So they'll be available there. We've got a couple. I'm on customereducation.org, the Slack channel there as well. I
Yep.
tend to talk frequently to different people through that modality as well. And Joe Kelly has
Okay.
his weekly roundup that he pushes out, and if there's anything super important, it'll show up there too. There's also
Link
is it
that
Joe
up.
Kelly? Let me look it up. I'll look it up later and send it to you, but
Okay.
or publish it out right here so that everybody can see it. But the other one is there's an updating site called tldr.ai. And if you really want to dig in deeper to what happens in the background, it's a great place to hang out because they on a daily basis publish like 3 or 4 different links to articles. Some of them are super intense. The MIT studies, I look at some of those and I go, really? No, I can't even begin to read that without a dictionary. And some of them I look at it and go, I'm into it today. This is really good. I love this. And so they do some really good work there and talk about the different tools and mostly the language models and what goes on with it. So there are a lot of places, but follow me on LinkedIn and I can, you'll get led to all of those other places. I think is probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so of course, when we think about AI, you hear a lot of people talk about AI, and they say we've had AI, we've incorporated AI into many different functions over many years. So it's not that it's necessarily new, but with the rise of ChatGPT and a lot of technologies now supporting this, there's mixed reactions, I would say, I'm seeing across the industry where some expectations are AI will be the magic to do everything. Why do we need learning organizations anymore? And then there's some people middle ground, which are like, I'm willing to try it, but I'm kind of skeptical. And then there's, of course, folks who are afraid that their job will be replaced by AI, both on the development and delivery side. So what are you seeing? What's your perspective on what you're seeing in the industry and how, people are approaching this or maybe walking through the change management that's to come?
The fear is real on 2 different levels. One about the jobs disappearing. I think that there is a deep-seated thought that has been prevalent all the way through customer education from when you and I first met, where the next iteration of technology was going to make instructors
Yes,
obsolete.
I remember
And
that.
right, we talked about it when we went to virtual deliveries. We talked about it when we started figuring out how to use in-app tools, right? Every technological innovation that has come to the market has put a little bit of a scare into instructors. What I
Yeah.
am starting to see more of is that people are a premium resource. So instead of disappearing entirely, customers are paying more for a premium experience. So in
Okay.
cases where learning has not been monetized at all historically, if you want someone to come on site or if you want a virtual delivery that is a live person, then that is a premium service for which you pay in some way, shape, or form. Again, it may not be education services that are monetized. It could be that you're paying for a premium support package.
Okay.
And part of that premium support level is customer success, customer education, and the ability to tier up quickly in the support chain, right? Whatever the tier level is for support. So I am seeing an increase in that philosophy at all levels of SaaS B2B. Not quite so much in the manufacturing sector or in professional services, but professional services are catching up very quickly in that regard. So I would say don't be afraid that the job of instructors or delivery is going to go away, but how do you morph that to make it a premium service would be the question that I would be asking, because that is customer education historically has always been, right, Sarah, about the idea that ROI, right? We need to justify our existence a lot of the time. And
Yeah.
being a money maker can help with that. It may not be the right solution for all parts of the business, but we were talking about Terry Valles earlier, Mr. Freemium to Premium. That's where I got that phrase from, was from him forever ago.
Yeah.
And I think that can be beneficial, right? That we can start with a service that is free, that gives people access to the learning that they need to be able to use our product. But if they want that premium level experience, then it's something that should be paid for. And so I think we're starting to see some coalescence around that thought in different markets, right? In different parts of SaaS B2B. Some industries are grasping it more quickly than others. And it doesn't seem to have any structure relating to size of the organization. Larger orgs by default usually monetize. That's like the HPs and the Oracles and those types of organizations usually monetize learning in some shape or form. Smaller organizations are still, they may still be transitional in some way to get to that. But we are starting to see from the customer success side of the equation and the customer experience as an entity, a premium service level to kind of differentiate, right? Even success and being able to monetize the success function to a degree. And I think that's where we'll start to see some of that activity is in the premium services type of engagement for
Okay.
customers.
Perfect. There has been I've heard some comments, I guess, in some of the industry forums I'm in, where people in the learning org have heard from the executives or maybe from others in the organization that AI can do anything in the learning side. So whether it be everyone can learn through chatbots, or AI can just build a course automatically. Why do we need learning professionals and learning organization? So have you been hearing any of that chatter, and how do we
Yes,
address
but it still doesn't work. We're hearing it from some of the less experienced C-suite members, right? People who don't really understand how AI is working in their niche that they're working in themselves. We're not ready yet. The tools that are out there can't do this without some kind of human intervention. It's not, somebody's going to still have to create that monolithic process-driven activity in AI and aggregate all of the tools, because there's no one tool that can do everything.
Yeah.
Right? So we're still going to need something like an educational ops person to manage all of that and build all of that. And I don't know that they can do that without the skill sets that content developers and the people in the work do the real jobs to create the customer education and the learning that we need, the learning portals, the content for the portals, what the learning paths can look like or should look like, and who's going to talk to SMEs. It's not going to be an AI tool, not yet anyway. It's even if I let the AI tool do the interview with a SME, I still have to do some follow-up. And so we're not there yet. Is 2024 going to be the year? No.
Yeah.
Is 2025 going to be the year? I don't think so. I think we're still at least a couple of years out from it being something that can be done out of the box, right? With no intervention. Doesn't mean people won't try.
Yes. Switching gears a little bit to thinking about data privacy. IT teams have security concerns, so I've certainly been meeting with companies where they want to try some of the AI solutions, even AI around personalization or chatbots, you name it. and of course, the IT teams and companies are really uber sensitive right now as everyone's trying to figure it out. So,
Right.
what have you seen, and what's your advice around how organizations can start to try solutions, even if, perhaps they have some restrictions internally?
There's a couple of things now that make it a little bit easier. The first is ChatGPT just came out 2 weeks ago with something called teams. And a team is 2 people or more.
Yeah.
And by purchasing at the ripe price of $40 per month for 2 people, it's $20 a person pretty much until you get really big. If you go enterprise, of course, big discounts start to kick in. But by doing that, they will give you your own instance of the language model, which means the content that you add in for the language model to be trained on the way that you do business is not something that the rest of the language model is going to learn and then disseminate out to other people. Right? So you're training your own copy basically of the language model. So there's that, and that solves most of the problems. Most of the vendors that are in the spaces that would be using generative AI have already leveraged the API language model from either from Claude or from Chat, right, from OpenAI. And the guys, they will have to identify this in the contract. So ask for a copy, right? Check in with your current vendors and see what they have already in the contract that they've identified, because they will have to tell you. They have to explain the security. And if they don't, of course, most legal teams would go, no, sorry. And InfoSec is going to look at you funny, right?
Yeah.
So it's important that, but everybody already has a policy. If they're incorporating some form of generative AI into their tools, then they already have that policy. Just get a copy from whoever your contact is at the vendor organization, and it will explain for you what is necessary, what they're going to do with your data and how they'll manage it and what they can do. Much of it follows along the same rules that we have already been working with, right? If you're in a SaaS, using a SaaS product, the idea is that your instance of the product may be separate, but your data may all be on the same server as somebody else's.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole idea of SaaS, is that we're all up in the cloud, and the cloud could be, 35 customers or 135 or 1,000 million 35 gazillions of people in one place, right? And that data is not going to commingle.
Awesome.
So
Thinking about video, the AI video, because it's pretty popular right now. At least I hear people experimenting with it, asking, for use cases that people have been successful doing. How are you seeing organizations uniquely incorporating the AI? And of course, like caveat, I can't say that word, caveating it with, best practice is not to just do training through video, but how can you incorporate that and then use these avatar-based, videos, or how can companies start to experiment with that?
number one, recognize language matters. The versions of, there's probably about 8, maybe 6 or 8 versions of English that are really moving along very quickly. American English, Canadian English, Australian English, and British English are 4 of the most common. So if you are already utilizing those particular dictionaries in your translations or anything else that you're doing, recognize that those are probably the farthest along, right, in the spectrum of where we are, so that they sound the most natural, right? So that's the starting point for that. We're starting to see some uptick in French, not so much Canadian French or French from any other parts that are not France. It's just, again, they sound very mechanical, very robotic in the way that they've been put together. And the same is true of most of the other languages. I am starting to see some progress in Asian languages. Chinese and Japanese are the first two that are getting better. They're still not as good, but everybody's heard the woman's voice up from TikTok, right? When she does the translation to English, she sounds really bad, but now it's a thing, right? Now it's a thing,
Yeah.
and so it's like a badge of honor to have her as the voice. But from a learning perspective, that's language does matter. So if you're using a language other than those like 6 or 7 languages, it's not right. It's not ready. It does sound a little bit off when the video kicks in. The avatar is also problematic to a certain extent because real people, well, there's 2 issues, right? The first part of it is real people. Who do you want to be the face, right? Before, as we've been migrating to an on-demand structure from an in-person training structure, I was the voice of my product. So when you saw the video on how to do reporting in Oracle, right, it was me, it was Kristine.
Yeah.
I still get comments from people in HCM world that say, I saw a video of yours the other day. And so there's still some stuff out there, even though I haven't really worked in that space for a couple of years, but you become the face. So do you want to have a person be the face, right? Or do you want to create a face? Do you want one of the avatars that are kind of out of the box to be your face? So you can go ahead and make it nondescript, not a real person. The benefit to not a real person is now the content really is yours for owning. It's not, because I don't know that I want I don't want you to auto-generate content with my face,
Right.
right? 2 years from now, when I don't work for you anymore, or 8 years from now, or whatever, when I don't work for you anymore, I don't know that I want my face to be still the face of the product or the voice of the product, because we can literally, set everything up in the language model to be Kristine's voice.
Yes.
Did you guys, the America's Got Talent a couple years ago had an AI generated um, engagement. I don't even know what to call it, because all they did was they made Simon Cowell be a character in there, and he wasn't even there. That was somebody else actually behind the scenes, but it sounded and looked exactly like him. And that is an issue that that's a legal thing, right? We have to figure out what that can do. We saw it with the writers' strike in Hollywood at the end of last year. Those are real issues, and you, as an organization, truthfully, this is where know your people, know your internal people, make friends with legal,
Mhm.
and see what they are saying about it, and how much they can support it before you plan what your video strategy is going to be.
Yeah. Certainly I think there are benefits, and we've been discussing this for a little while too, around uh, the legal components around it. If you leave the company, are you still able to
Right.
use avatar?
Exactly.
But on the flip side, creating a made up avatar helps that, because you don't need to rely on
Exactly.
to stay at the organization. You still have the same character or face to the product. So pros
It's
and
one of the
cons.
reasons we went to Doodles. Remember when Doodles were the thing
Yeah.
a couple 3 years ago? We went to Doodles because you could make them up, right? They weren't a real person.
Right.
And some of that is going to carry through, I think, right? We do, because we just can't risk the legal issues that would arise from keeping somebody on the payroll, because I don't know that I want to pay residuals to someone for showing a training video.
All interesting things we'll have to figure out. Back in the day, it was just an instructor in front of a
Right.
class.
Right.
So just a reminder, if you're on the webinar and you have a question, feel free to submit a question. We'll take some time at the end there. But I have a couple more quick ones I want to get through, which I think are important. The first one being, what do you think will be some of the friction points that will prevent education organizations from maybe innovating or trying or deploying AI capabilities?
I think there's three. The one we just talked about, right? The using people in video situations. The second, I think, has to do with the fear of the data, right? Of the sharing of data.
Yeah.
And the third part to it is the costs that are going to be involved in getting those first two taken care of, right? So if you because you can, there are I use free versions of generative AI tools every day, almost every single day when I'm working.
Yeah.
And I use Claude AI, I use Bard, I use ChatGPT 3.5, although I am getting ready to pay for 4 shortly to be part of Teams. And and then I use Copilot, right? Microsoft just released, in the last several weeks, has released Copilot as an add-in now to Windows 11 on PCs. So when you install the updates to Windows 11, Copilot becomes a part of the OS and makes it really readily available. Also part of Office 365. Bard is now connected to Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, all of the Google Office suite of tools. So you can leverage them there for free, right? But if you want to put that kind of wall between your data and everyone else's and how the language model is learning, then that costs money. And kind of having to build justification to get the money to buy those tools is the issue. I think is going to be a big issue for people still.
Yeah, actually, what on that, because again, I talk to many people across certainly North America, but even into Europe and Asia. Now there's all these, like, I think organizations are being encouraged to research AI capabilities, whether it be on the development or delivery side. How can we create a more personalized learning? How can we have chatbots so that people can ask questions, like all sorts of ways to provide knowledge to someone who needs to learn it. But then, looking at that strategy overall and then thinking about all the different tools or things that you need to do can get expensive. And so I think IT teams and CFOs are being bombarded with requests, and we're just talking about the learning organization. So we also
imagine, right? Multiply that by the entire customer experience side of the and product, right? Generative AI is helping to code for product development too.
Exactly. So how would you recommend organizations deal with that? Like, certainly on the flip side, when it comes to the development, huge productivity gains. So they can do more with less, there's business case. And then for servicing the customer, the learner, like, it makes it way more effective for them because it's personalized and exactly what they need to know. But then, having to try and get that approved, I am seeing people have difficulty. So what's your advice there?
I don't know that it's any different than what we would have done for any other tools, right? I think that the structure that we have, and we've talked about this one before, right, Sarah, where it's just a tool. So you have to justify it the same way that you would justify any tool that you wanted to add to your toolkit.
Yeah.
Being able to get it.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Build your use case, build the justification for the tool in exactly the same way you would do it if you wanted to buy Camtasia, which has an AI component now too.
Yeah.
Right. Or any of the other tools that are out there. Everybody's adding some type of AI into their toolkits. The guys at TechSmith are doing it. The guys at Adobe are doing it. Right. Everybody's got some kind of generative AI that they're including. It could be image generation. Canva's doing image generation in their tools now. PowerPoint will allow you to create images in their designer tool, right? So it's not just text that we talk about, but generative AI is moving into other realms as easily as it did into the text realm initially. And so that justification is really exactly the same as it would be for any other tool in the toolkit. And it is not usually any more expensive than a tool that doesn't include it, right? So if you are looking to generate, to get a new authoring tool, make sure you're just asking the right questions about AI, right? What are they doing with the data? How does the language model learn? And is there an extra fee for using it?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
it's pretty simple in that regard, right?
On the flip side, now you've been able to navigate internally to get what you need. How are you seeing, I know you're going into companies and helping them. How are you seeing the downstream effect? So the change, people in the organization's reaction to the change in process or adopting new ways of building learning or delivering learning.
The efficacy in time is the biggest change that I'm seeing so far, in that, right from that we're saving at least 30%
Yeah.
of the amount of time that we would spend on the rote part of building content, which is by far the most time intensive part of whatever it is, the design of the structure of whatever your content is. I think that's probably, for me anyway, that's the most intensive from a time perspective. It just takes time, right? You have to get with your SMEs. If you're not the SME, you have to do the interviews, you have to build the content, right? And that entire workflow can be disrupted with AI.
Yeah.
And that can save at least 30%. There are estimates out there that say over the next couple of years, that number is going to jack up to 45, 50, maybe even 60%.
Wow.
But it also means that I can then focus on what would have been more important things
I
in
know.
the process, right? That we had to we didn't have time to do. It means I can tackle more content. It means that the issue that we have always had is I only have this many people,
Yeah.
whatever this many is for you. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's a team, sometimes it's hundreds, right? At Oracle, we had 250 content developers stretched out across the globe. That's
Wow.
a lot of people
Yeah.
across all of the product lines, right? So knowing that, I can leverage my time to do more content, to build, in some cases, better content, because we had to get something out. Dave Darrington talks a lot about iteration, right, in his delivery of what customer education is. And I don't disagree with that. But if I was responsible at Oracle for 52 courses, one person across 4 product lines.
Using the really traditional process too.
Right, very traditional process. Granted,
So
I did a lot of it myself, but imagine now that I could barely touch each course every year.
yes.
Barely.
Yeah. One thing I had been advising is to pick one use case to start. So what is your biggest pain point that you can't solve with your current process or current tools or people? And then go research if there's a way to do it, or all the forums that you just talked about. Are there things that other people are doing in the industry to solve that problem? And then trying that use case. So whether it's through a technology, maybe doing a trial version or experimenting with different process, and seeing what successes or productivity gains you can get, and then socializing that, and then tackle another use case. And
Exactly.
probably this is change management 101, but I do see that the change management piece seems to be hard for some learning organizations that have perhaps been doing the same
And
thing.
I think because the technology itself is new, people think that the change management process should be different than what we normally would do. And
Right.
it's not. It really is the same thing. It's just another tool in our toolkit.
Yes.
And leveraging that, socializing it, making sure that the right people are in from the decision-making process, right? If your team needs to be helping you make decisions about it, make sure they're there. Make sure you have representatives. If you're talking about cross-functional collaboration, because this tool is something that more than one team will use, build out that cross-functional collaboration as you're working with the purchasing of the tool, right? Again, these things are not new to us. That process of change management is not new. And don't assume that AI is so different that we have to create a new process for that. We don't.
Agree. Okay, we do have a question. So if there's any other questions, just submit them. But the question is, what is the most critical ethical question around using AI for customer education?
The learning of the language model, I think, that training the language model and making sure that what we've got is not already biased, or that we're not incorporating even more bias into the way that we're building out the content.
What are some examples of bias?
I think that the biggest issue is that when you start to leverage AI tools, they're already coming at you with a bias. So you have to make sure that when you're creating, particularly generative AI, again, right, assuming that's the main content that people are talking about, that when you build out your questions and your prompts for that conversation that you have with your AI tool, your generative AI tool, that you are making sure to include what your audience really looks like. So there's a couple of studies out there that deal with the DEI, right? Diversity, right?
Yeah.
And it took one person 17 tries in asking AI to generate an image that included a handicapped person of color. They had
Interesting.
to
Yeah.
refine the prompt 17 times to get to a point where that was in the audience, right? That the options included that particular aspect of their audience. So I think it really comes to knowing your audience. And again, this is not different, right? In customer education, you need to know your audience.
Yeah.
And if you know your audience, then you can build the prompts in an ethical way that is less biased than what might come to you, right? Right, might already be a part of the language model. But that, I think, is probably the biggest issue that we'll see is it continues to learn. And the end of last year, there were some studies that proved that ChatGPT was getting stupider because it was learning from the questions that people were asking.
Oh, interesting.
So,
okay, another
I
question.
think that's a good one.
Another one, if you were starting a customer ed program, or this could apply to any from scratch, what tool would you prioritize? Which AI tool would you prioritize?
It's going to be twofold, I think. The first is identifying whatever generative AI tool that you want to help you out. Particularly if you're starting a CE program from scratch, it probably means that your team is 1 to 3 people. And if there's more than one, congratulations. But the thought process behind that is that generative AI will certainly help you with the content creation in a way that you just won't be able to get through with just that few number of people based on your product. The second part to that is an LMS that includes a personalized learning path construct. Everybody expects a level of personalization now because we all have Netflix and we all have Hulus and Disney Pluses, and everybody's showing us the things that are of interest to us based on what we've done before. My husband and I both share the same YouTube channel that comes up on our television, and we have completely disparate tastes when we start looking for things, so it looks like a hot mess. But I think that for me, that would be the two pieces that I think are super important, right? Get a generative AI tool that you trust, and make sure that however you're displaying that information.
Go
ahead.
No, it's okay. Came back.
Oh, what's this one?
Came back. I think we just lost you for a sec. All right.
What
Can
is
you
your
hear
take
me,
on
Kristine?
AI being Yep, can you hear me? Are we good? Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep. We're good now. Yep. We're good. We're back.
Okay.
We're back in business. Okay. So next. Okay. So those are good points. I think thinking about the design, plan, develop, delivery, you have to design and plan to start. So prioritize those kind of tools. And then as you think about delivery, you can add. What's your take on AI being applied to cohort-driven learning? For context, I'm going off to Dr. Philippa Hardman's recent Substack on the subject. I'm not familiar with that.
I think that what we'll start to see in practical experience, Courtney over at HubSpot is starting cohort learning this year for the HubSpot University and the learning portal for HubSpot. I think that's going to be our first practical example of that in a large environment, right, where they have a lot of learners going through on a regular basis. That said, I'm a believer in cohort-based learning. And I think I haven't read the entire article yet that is referenced here, but I will. And I will publish what I really think about that particular article in LinkedIn for anybody that wants to see what I think of it. But I think that we are headed in that direction, and that AI can help personalize the cohort experience in much the same way it personalizes the individual experience. I don't think that those two things are opposites in any way, shape, or form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that one's interesting to think about. I haven't thought about that. Okay, we'll be looking to see your take on that.
Let me
And
click the link so that I can go ahead and bring it up on my screen and have it to review. There we go. I got it.
we have 2 minutes left. What are the opportunities ahead for 2024, Kristine?
Oh gosh. I think that it's going to become just second nature. Generative AI is going to become second nature to everyone over the course of probably the first 8 months of this year. I think every single tool that we use is going to incorporate generative AI, and we'll just become so literate on it. It'll be like using spell check, which, as we know, some people still don't use. But so that's not going to go away either. But I think that's going to be just generative AI is going to become so much a part of the ecosystem that we're going to wonder when we didn't use it by the end of the year. I think that we're going to start to see at the end of the year, second half, maybe even into Q4 of this year, I think that's when we're going to start to see some aggregation in vendor tools. We've seen an explosion of startups, right, working with all different kinds of tools. And I think that we're going to start to see some aggregation of that, where acquisitions will kick in. Mergers and acquisitions are going to start happening at the end of the years, because as we know, when there are so many tools out there, things just coalesce.
Then I'll make it easier to pick.
I think so.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristine Kukich, and of the Training Sherpa. And thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining
guys.
and all of that great insight. And we'll be chatting soon.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.